Hi, Ollie.
Hi, how are you, Helen?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm ready for today's session.
Great. After this Mercury retrograde, all this week, all these
Yeah,
challenges.
yeah. So
Um,
it's conjunct my sun, this Mercury retro, and actually, it's like being plugged into an electric socket. My brain is just like either fully on or fully off at the moment. That's what it feels like with the retrograde. But the actual astrological weather around us is really quite nice this weekend. We're tapping into that water trine, the sun's trine, Neptune, sun opposite Uranus today as well. And then Venus taps into that trine with Pluto and Saturn, not Pluto, but Saturn and Neptune next week. And the sun is sextile Pluto this weekend. So there's a lot going on actually in the sky at the moment, but a lot of it's benevolent.
yeah, yeah, and many planets retrograde with Jupiter
Yeah,
as well. So
yeah.
we've got Saturn, Neptune, Uranus, Jupiter, Mercury,
hmm
Chiron
But
as well. So
yeah, Chiron
yes,
too. But Mercury goes, well, it's still being shadow, but it officially directs on November the 30th, I think. And I think doesn't Saturn turn direct at the end of
yes,
next week? Yeah. Sorry, I was having a little look for my weekend column that I do, and it's a bit of fun. I just look at the weekend weather, so to speak. So I noticed all the trines and sextiles, but I was just saying the sun is opposite Uranus today too, so you can expect the unexpected. And I think
yeah. So lots of
yeah, that those technical glitches we just had, maybe that was the Mercury retro
lots of
and the sun.
unexpected events.
Yeah.
Yes, and yeah, I've seen that especially with cryptocurrencies and the markets with because Bitcoin is just is having is now in a bear market, and it has decreased its price a lot, and it was just within 2 3 days it just went down a lot. So I've
Okay.
seen that affecting. I suppose also that because of Mercury retrograde and all this configuration.
Mm.
But I guess it's about Uranus retrograde in Taurus as well,
hmm
because Uranus is obviously the planet that rules Bitcoin.
Yep.
And but today, yeah, I mean the last 3 days has been awful. Yeah,
Okay. All right. Well,
yeah,
I don't really follow the financial markets, but I've done a little bit of uh, mundane astrology, just on Uranus in Taurus, and I know at the time when Uranus was in Taurus, so of course it's come out and it's flipped back in until February next year. So it's kind of like its final swan song there. But quite a few astrologers were predicting the end of like physical money. Um, the rise of Bitcoin and the end of physical money with Uranus in Taurus. But I'm still quite fond of my, cash.
yes, because
Yeah,
cash is one of flags for our freedom. Because if we don't keep cash, if we just have online money, well, the government or any corporations can cancel the bank accounts and
yeah,
can control where you spend your money, how much you spend, similar to what is happening in China. So I fortunately, hopefully, that's a word, cash won't disappear. I
yeah.
encourage everyone to use cash or
And
to
to and
just
to and to
focus
stash
their
it.
energy on this
Yeah,
important thing that we've had for many years.
yeah,
And I don't want governments to control us somehow.
yeah. So my Venus is in
Helen,
Capricorn.
can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear
Okay,
me?
because all of
Yeah,
a sudden I couldn't see you.
yeah. No, I can
Yeah.
hear you. I was just thinking, though, my Venus is in Capricorn, so it's quite a traditional Venus, and I do like cash. And actually, I was really reluctant to even consider online banking. I wanted to keep my checkbook and my, stash your cash under the mattress kind of thing. If you've got something tangible, it feels real. I think that's quite a Venus in an Earth sign type attitude to money. I do online banking now. I had to move with the flow, but I was probably one of the last ones to get there. But I think it's interesting. I don't think that. I mean, we've got till February with Uranus in Taurus, and yes, society's moved a long way towards a cashless society, because I don't always carry cash these days. But it hasn't quite gone, has it? It's still about.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah.
Okay, so today we are going to talk about education and astrology. And well, we could start talking about the first house, which the first house about education, which is the third house, not the first house, which
Yeah.
is about the early education, and is where all of us experience our first experiences learning at the
Yeah.
school,
Yeah.
especially, and the environment we've got there with our classmates, the
Yeah.
kind of education we've got, the
Yeah.
how we process the information, how we think, how we receive, or what we like learning as well.
Yeah.
So that's I think that would be the first thing I would pay attention to if I
Yeah.
was to talk about how a person is experiencing education, because especially those experiences at school are sometimes they leave a mark on a person. and, and that's something that, for example, I remember people who had, especially some planets are difficult, and they can have like they think that they cannot go to university because they struggle studying at school, for example, with SAT sometimes. and
Yeah.
and that's, I think, the beginning, because that is how we start our developing our intellectual abilities, skills, and sometimes it's about dealing with the first experience in order to reinterpret or to learn from it. So what do you think about the third house?
Yeah, I think it's informative along with Mercury. So I would definitely look to the third house for the early experience in education with a client, and the third ninth house axis. I would also look at Mercury for how someone learns, and I think that's interesting. Now, we mentioned at the beginning we're in a Mercury retrograde period at the moment, and I said I've got Mercury conjunct my Sun. It's slowed down, and I'm either really fully switched on or fully switched off at the moment. And I have Mercury retrograde natally in Sagittarius. What did it mean for school? Because I think Mercury retrograde has got some bad press out there. There's some general astrology that says, oh, if a planet's retrograde, this person's going to be a bit slower thinking, or a bit, and I think that's a very old interpretation of a Mercury retrograde. So, we're looking at the third house, we're looking at Mercury retro to see about how somebody learns, how somebody thinks. I've just got to say, as a teacher for a long, long time, this would be really helpful in the classroom, but it's not something I've ever been able to use because it's not accepted. So I do it the traditional way, which is watching a child learn in class and teaching them and all the rest of it. But astrology could give you a few shortcuts there. But that Mercury retrograde, and I think it's probably good that we're talking about it because I've got Mercury retrograde, so obviously I'm going to talk about it today. I don't think that means that I'm any more slow to process things. I think it probably means that I tend to go over things again and again mentally. So you can tell me something and that will sort of just ping around in my head until it finds a way to to come out, which is actually not a bad thing when you think about memory and how memory works, because memory works through recalling things all the time to get something into the long-term memory. So I've written about this sort of stuff. Actually, with that Mercury retrograde, I've written about recall, which is interesting. I hadn't thought about that, but that's what my books are about. They're about using recall to help you take exams. And with that Mercury retrograde, that's what I do. I recall information, conversations all the time. And that's certainly how the Mercury retrograde works, rather than it making me a slow learner. I've also got a Mercury Saturn square, which again, traditional interpretations might say, oh, that's somebody who's going to take a long time. Actually, I've found that it just gives me the tenacity to study long and hard. So, yeah, I don't mind studying for a long time. I'm very happy to do that. Maybe that's it. But certainly that third house. This is interesting. I had some very happy school days, I have to say, but I really only ever settled when my sister joined me at school, which of course, she's being a sibling, which is also ruled by the third house. So that's quite interesting. I wonder what role siblings play in the early education as well, because often you are at school with your siblings when you're young.
Yeah. Yes, for Mercury retrograde, I think it's also about having more an inner space, an inner world. So maybe it's not about focusing so much on the outside, but something's about different way to things. Yeah.
Yeah,
So and a different way to process information. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
For
I
example,
think
I've
I
got
think so. Yeah, yeah, that makes sense, Ollie.
yeah, I've got no. You were mentioning traditional astrology, and that's interesting because I've got, according to the traditional astrology, I've got one of the worst Mercuries because my
Ah,
Mercury is in Pisces, so it's in detriment and peregrine, and it has well, the score is really low,
yeah, yeah,
and I think well, it's true that maybe I'm not quick. I'm not that I don't got that speedness of communicating, but I've got a for I think I've got a rich inner world, and I love learning. I spend my life learning,
mm,
and I communicate also in a different way. For example, when I channel the
yeah,
spirits, I use intuition a lot, and I get that way of communication, those messages, or I've got the feelings many times. So I then is when I think that we need to take traditional astrology for a specific context, but don't use it literally,
yeah,
because we need to see the whole context. And obviously, I think that yeah, obviously, if you've got a strong Mercury in its domicile, it's gonna be in that way stronger because it's like the conventional way to learn, or the conventional way that Mercury can communicate. But there are different ways of communication,
yeah,
and sometimes they are not that effective apparently, but they've got like a different nuance,
yeah,
and it touches a different atmosphere which is not covered
yeah.
in, for example, in a logical Mercury, no, for
Yeah,
example.
I think that's interesting. When I said traditional, I probably didn't mean traditional astrology. I just meant sort of the old astrological books that talk about Mercury retrograde, because the traditional interpretation has got such a strong set of rules. But I think, Mercury in Pisces, as you said, is like a gift in terms of being able to reach into a kind of different consciousness there. But I just find it interesting that the general rules out there need to be challenged, really, because, as I say, a Mercury retro does not apply that. Now as a teacher and a professional, you get you get your year groups in, you get your classes in, and they're going to have some of those children with birthdays around the same time are going to have similar Mercury placements because of where Mercury was when they were born. And I'm just saying what a bank of useful data that would be if you were allowed to use that in schools. But we don't use that in schools because our schools are, I don't want to use the word tradition again because it's nothing to do with astrology, but they are, well, if you read my books, I get on about it a bit, but our school system is, certainly in the UK, Ollie, is dated back to the Victorian times. And we tend to teach subjects in blocks of learning, and you learn geography in the geography room, you learn maths in the maths room. And I argue in one of my books that you need to break down those walls and those blocks, both curriculum wise and physically wise, because the world needs people to think more cross-pollinated way, so that more ideas are coming together across different subjects if we really want creative thinking and to solve problems.
Yeah.
So that's just one of my pet things. And I think, astrology could really give some insights there, because you can say, this child has Mercury in Pisces, like you. And let's say, you've got one in the 12th house and one in the 4th house, depending on the birth chart. That's going to mean a different learning style. And I think it's a teacher's job, actually, to be able to tap into that child's learning style. Although there is some research out there that says learning in a way that is more difficult is actually quite a good thing for you, because you remember more. But we'll not go into all that now. But I just think it's really useful information that we don't use in education. And I know that some people have written about this in the astrological world, and there is some research out there. And I did some research in the school.
Yeah, I think that it's a pity that we don't. Astrology is not taken into account in schools nowadays. But
Yeah.
at least I think that parents who are open-minded,
Yeah.
they could have a look at their children's birth
Yeah.
charts to pay attention to their children's Mercury, so
Yeah.
as to know how their child is going to learn
Yeah.
and foster those spaces, those
Yeah.
tools that can improve their learning experiences, and don't force them to learn in a different way that
Yeah.
is not their way or their natural way to learn. So I
Yeah.
think that Mercury, as you said at the very beginning,
Yeah.
is a key planet.
And the third
And
house. Well, third house describes the school, doesn't it? More than the thinking. It describes, mind you, the third house is underpinned.
but at the same time, it's talking
Yeah.
about what interests you and how you process
Yeah.
information.
Yeah.
So, for
Yeah.
example, I don't have a strong Mercury, but I've got Gemini in the third house.
Uh-huh.
So that is compensating that part of
Yeah.
Mercury.
So that's
So yeah,
just an important point, isn't it? Because it's the whole chart that contextualizes
yes, yeah,
everything, actually. So that's an important point to make. But the
yeah,
third house, and whatever disposits that third house cusp, is going to be significant in how somebody learns. But you can certainly feed ideas in a lot more. Obviously, again, there isn't usually room in a school day for that to happen, for a teacher to have that kind of knowledge of every single individual child, and they have so much content that they have to get through because they have so many exams they've got to take. So we're not geared up to a more
yeah.
creative
Yeah,
approach,
because the
actually.
system is pushing you to follow specific
Yeah.
criteria, to teach specific syllabus. So I mean, you've got something you can do, but not much, because
Yeah.
obviously you are in a it's not your private academy, private school where you
Yeah.
teach what you like, how you like.
Yeah.
I've got the same experience because I was a teacher as well,
Yeah.
and obviously I realized some kids didn't fit
Yeah.
the system, and
Mm.
it was not the right place, but it was a system. So that's why I think that the important thing is that parents, especially parents, learn about their child's
Yeah.
education, how they work, and then they can foster maybe with extracurricular
Yeah.
activities.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
We've
I mean,
got a
I was
question.
oh, really
Yes.
already. Gosh, that's early, Ollie.
Yes.
But yeah.
Our
What's the,
friend Elise, our colleague, says, do you two practice modern planetary rulership or traditional ancient rulership?
I'd say both, because if I'm reading natally, once you've learnt horary, you know stuff there. So although I use modern psychological astrology mainly for a natal chart, I'm so conscious of rulerships and horary stuff in the background, that it kind of blends into this fusion. Plus, like Ollie, there's some messages that will come down sometimes and some words in your head that you're just being inspired to say, intuiting. But I don't know about you, Ollie, but
Yeah,
I get bits of both.
I'm gonna try to link the question to the topic because we could divert the topic and I don't want
Yeah,
to get lost.
yeah.
So in terms of education, I try to use both because for me it's, both systems have meaningful information, provide
Mm-hmm.
lots of information. So I try to use, for example, what we talk about the negative aspect of Mercury, for example, in my case. So I realize sometimes, for example, the message doesn't go across directly, or for example, it's in a how is it called, in a mute sign. So for example, I tend not to speak that much, and that's something I learned in traditional astrology, and it's true as for how I communicate.
Yeah.
Whereas as for how I learn, I don't think my Mercury is so weak because I've learned a lot. I was a really good student,
Mm-hmm.
and I had no problems at learning, and I keep learning a lot. I'm a lifelong learner, so I try to combine both things, and sometimes with aspects the same. So, I try to apply what I find more meaningful. For example, the movement of the moon, which is quite, for me, it's quite significant. What the moon is going, if it is an applying or separating aspect as well. So I use both, but trying to not to be not to take it to an extreme, I would
Mm.
say.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I just think that naturally, if you practice horary, some of it's going to come in because of the dispositorships and because of the weight of the planets. And as you say, so the moon that we use in horary, and I'm going to steer us back to education as well because I like the fact that we're staying on the pinpoint that we're supposed to be talking about today, Ollie. If I just think about, I use myself as an example. I've got that Mercury retrograde in Sagittarius. It's square Saturn. The moon is actually applying to Mercury in my chart. And we mentioned last week, I said, we were talking about that fourth house cusp. And I said, it's Sagittarius there. This moon, I've actually got Sun, Moon, Sun, Moon, Mercury, and the South Node all together at the bottom of the chart. And it's just leave me in a library. I'm very happy. I can see your books, Ollie, in the background. You can see mine in the background. Just leave me in the library. This is very sort of Sagittarian. Just let me stay in the knowledge. Let me be amongst that knowledge. Forever happy there. So actually, when you talk about Mercury retrograde, and learning styles or learning it, and it being a bit more working on your own, if you like, a bit more independent learning. I loved reading as a child, and I would lose myself in books. I just thought they were real. I mean, that was just lovely. So I was very able to escape into that inner literary world. I tend to read more technical stuff these days, like you, like a lifelong learner. And I've written a lot of stuff about the use of memory and teaching styles and that kind of thing. So it's definitely Mercury retro working very well actually in my chart. I wonder if it. I wonder if Mercury. This would be quite an interesting study to look at. If Mercury retro or Moon applying to Mercury or Moon separating from Mercury can say anything about memory and how memory works. in a
Mm.
chart. I can feel a little bit of a study coming on
Yeah,
on there.
it makes sense because, for example, this is reminding me of what happens in horary when we study missing objects, and
Uh-huh.
many times the moon separating an object is that you forgot that object somewhere. So
Yeah,
it makes sense, and well, we need to experience that, but it might be, yes,
yeah, yeah. I just think
okay.
that's quite interesting because people's memories work in different ways. And the sign that I found generally in clients where memory is pretty hot is if Mercury is in Cancer, actually. And I'm think about, so Cancer disposited by the moon. You've got a moon Mercury contact there already, or at least they're receiving each other in some kind of way. And I have met an awful lot of people with Cancer prominent in their chart who've got just incredible memories. So I think there is a, as you said, there's a moon. The moon is something to do with it. The moon Mercury link in a chart. So we've said third house, we've said
Mm,
Mercury, and now actually what we're going on is nailing it down a bit more and saying Moon and Mercury aspects or dispositorships or relationships, accidental or oh god, Mercury retro, the dignities,
yeah.
the
Mm,
dignity rulerships that are horary
yeah.
based.
You mentioned about the moon, and I think that's another key aspect, especially for children, because
Mm,
as they are so identified with the moon, the emotional world is so important. I think that we need to combine both things, the Mercury and their moon, because if we don't understand how their moon works, we are not going to raise their interest. They are not going to feel like cared or taken into account. And I think we need to approach to learn how the person feels um, like relaxed or can feel nurtured somehow
yeah,
in order to convey the message, because many times we need to adapt how the person is going to receive the message according to what the person needs or the child needs, and
yeah,
how he or she interprets the message. So we need to work with those planets in order to be
yeah,
effective, and that's something that I think teachers is a challenge, but teachers could do if they knew their students' moon and their
yeah,
students' Mercury. But
yeah,
obviously, in classroom,
yeah.
it's not that easy.
Yeah, we don't go there. If I was looking at that kind of data, I wouldn't have been teaching for very long. But it's as an astrologer, we have just a wonderful insight into that. And I'm smiling because on the sort of very young early years curriculum in the UK, there's some literature there that talks about how teachers, classrooms, schools should create awe and wonder in children, opportunities for awe and wonder in these small children. And it just made me smile because if we knew what the moon was doing, what the Mercury was doing, because a child's awe and wonder, this child A is going to be very different to child B. So it just makes me smile because this is a wonderful thing to do. That's what education should be about. It should be about awe and wonder, and of course, astrology has given me that ever since I started to learn it. And that's obviously I wasn't learning it when I was 4, but from probably about 19. So it's a long time. Um, and I've always had that sense of awe and wonder with it. It's just fascinating. Uh, but what a
Yes,
wonderful thing to
but
be able to give if we could give that. Yeah.
yeah, but I think the wonder is not a priority when the children are not.
I've lost you, Ollie. You've frozen on me. I'll text you.
Can you hear me now,
Yeah, you're back.
Ellen?
Yeah, you're back.
Yes,
Yeah, you just froze.
but I mentioned your name is frozen.
Yeah, you were just going to say, we were just talking about awe and wonder, and you've gone again.
Yes,
Ah,
but the connection is not stable yet. I don't know. No? Okay. Yeah, I was saying that a wonder is nice, but the reality is something different. And I was saying that sometimes or many times we need, I think, or it could be advisable to pay attention to the moon and the Mercury because that's where we can find like the trauma or what is
mm,
affecting the child. So if we don't solve that, if we don't address, if we don't try to attend it, so obviously the child cannot learn because the child has got other interests or other needs, not
mhm,
interest,
yeah,
which are affecting him or her. So that's the point, I would say. We've got
yeah. So is it
Elise. Yeah.
okay? Okay, go on, Ollie. Yeah,
And she said what you mentioned before. She said, I have Cancer Mercury Moon conjunct in the eighth house. I'm literally the keeper of memories.
yeah, yeah. That doesn't surprise me, and those memories will run very deep. I would have thought in the eighth house, but there's something about Cancerians and the moon and memory. And as I say, I think it would make some very interesting research. I mean, so this is um, interesting for me. I did a small research paper on astrology in education. It's in the Astrological Association magazine for September, and I was lucky enough to be able to work with real teachers in a real school. Obviously it's all anonymous, but just wondered how they would respond to the use of astrology in education, not teaching astrology, but using bits of astrology to know a bit more about children, their behaviours, and how they learn. And I mean, the results are there. I think it was about 33 members of staff I managed to survey, and it was overwhelmingly like a positive reception, which I was quite surprised. I was quite surprised. I thought that the system may have made this, but I think, genuinely lovely people in a lovely school, and they were actually very open to the idea of knowing a bit more about children in this way. I think we're a long way from ever being able to do that, but I might as well put it out there. That would be my hope, that one day that the system could see that we are. It would be an absolutely wonderful use of information, obviously with parental consent, etc., etc. If you could tap into that. In the meantime, I'm absolutely with you, Ollie, that it's really important information for parents to have about their children, because that way they can find something. I mean, kids will probably naturally, with the moon, gravitate towards something that's with the moon in the chart that they really like, but not always. And I think it could be really helpful where there are difficulties in learning or processing or memory, to see what might
Mm.
then be a strategy to trigger something for that child. I mean, we have so many more children these days with either diagnosed or undiagnosed ADHD, or maybe on the autistic spectrum. And all of that's really interesting in the astrological world. And I know Judith Hill's done some stuff around this in some of her classes. I do find it fascinating. And I think it's probably something I'll spend a bit more time studying as I'm a
Yeah,
lifelong learner. Yeah,
I had a student, and I checked her. I didn't know her birth time, but I knew her birthday. So
yeah,
I checked her chart, and I realized and understood because she was a person. She was a special girl. She had this kind of spectrum. She was a bit antisocial, but it was more in an inner way how she experienced that, not people. Can you hear me now?
yeah. I can hear you.
Okay.
Yeah,
So she was
now you've gone.
you hear me now?
You're back. Yeah.
Yes or not?
Yeah, you're
Oh
back.
gosh.
Have you got thunderstorms in Spain?
Yeah. mm, There are no thunderstorms here.
Okay.
I don't know
Okay.
what the problem is.
Okay. You're back
Mercury.
anyway. You're telling me about a student.
Yes, I was talking about the student I had, and well, the point is that she was different. She was not. She didn't feel accepted by others.
Mhm. You're back. Yeah.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
My goodness, what an adventure!
I think this
So
is the
briefly,
Mercury retrograde and the Sun opposite Uranus today, Ollie. But go for it. Yeah, your student. You
yeah,
explain if
because
you.
I don't know. Yeah, I was saying about that.
Yeah, she just felt
The
different.
student
Yeah.
I had,
Yeah.
she was different. She felt not accepted by others. She had her own style. And I checked, and she had Uranus conjunct her Sun,
Yeah.
and that's why I understood that she was so different. And she even had epilepsy. She had an attack
Epilepsy.
of
Yeah.
epilepsy.
Yeah.
And I wow, when I saw the chart, I thought, wow, so symbolic, so direct, so clear, because
Yeah.
I understood that she had those like the information or that different uniqueness downloaded into her, and being so young, not being able to assimilate the information, to articulate. And yes, and then she was also Pisces, so I thought, wow, she's got a strong influence of Neptune as well.
Yeah.
And for her,
So
yeah,
that's
the
that. You know,
traditional
that's. It's really strange that you've shared that example today because you've got the Sun opposite Uranus, which is like that electrical switching on and off. But the Sun is also trine Neptune today, which is the the sea and the watery sign of the Pisces. So you've got both of those aspects in the sky as you're talking about this. Can I ask you, Ollie, did you share that with their parents? Did you say, can we do this? Or did you just sort of have a quick quick look?
I just shared her at the very. It was just the last day of the school because I didn't
Okay.
know how
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
parents would react. I
Yeah.
did tell them that I work as an with astrology,
Yeah.
and I told her mom about that difficult aspect, that she was unique and that she had to be different, and probably she wouldn't be accepted by others because she has such a unique style.
Yeah.
And yes, I told her briefly, not many details, but yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that Sun conjunct Uranus in Pisces would be somebody who can literally, probably, so I'm thinking, just incredible IT skills here. This is like the language of
Mm,
coding. Coding would be a language that she could learn really, really readily. But information that way is going to be either on or off. It's just going to, she can probably download a load of stuff really, really quickly that would take other students 6 months to do, or she might not be bothered to do that one day because the
mm,
Uranus might be switched. The Uranus might be switched off a bit one day, just
yeah.
depending what's happening by transit. But how informative is that? I was also somebody who might one day really love to study astrology with that Sun conjunct Uranus. You do find Uranus
Yeah.
prominent in
Yeah.
astrologers charts, but I've also found Uranus prominent in techie people. What I would deem techie people.
Yeah, she loved arts, and I don't know what, but yeah, she wanted to do art, and she liked what's the subject in English? Arts. She liked arts
Yeah,
and music, so
yeah,
obviously she was connected to that.
yeah.
Yes, and she was a lovely girl, but you need to realize that you couldn't treat her like the rest because she fell out of the stream, no, and if she was not for a person to be in the traditional school, because she's got her own style and own characteristics. But it was really nice to check her birth chart at the end of the year to understand her, and like to see the connection, between what
But
I
yeah,
have experienced
yeah.
and the,
So
the birth.
if you were able to do that, if it was ever allowed that you could do that at the beginning of a year when you're getting all your lessons prepared, you could facilitate
Mm,
all of that. You can find subjects that the kids are interested in, ways of learning that they're going to be interesting. You could say straight away, you don't need to worry about having a pen. You're going to do it on your laptop because that's just faster for you. There's all of that kind of thing that you can tell about a child. But as I say, where we are at the moment in society, it's a dream. Your comment about but parents can access that is very true, and they can see an astrologer and they can say what's going to motivate, inspire, what is my child going to really love to learn, and we can certainly help them with that kind of information. um, yeah, it is really, really interesting, and as I say, that
yeah,
research
yeah,
showed me
because
that.
I think,
Go on.
yeah, for me, yeah,
Yeah.
Helen,
Okay. Yeah, you're still there. I can still
I
see you
can't
and
hear
hear.
you.
Oh, I can hear you.
I can hear you, so.
Okay.
No,
No.
yes, no. I think the sound is back, but
Okay.
the image goes off. Yeah, I think,
Right.
well, despite the problems, but we can, no, we can leave it here.
Yeah. Yeah, we've had a lot of technical glitches today. We've said some important
Yeah.
stuff. We've said, look at the third house, look at Mercury. Don't forget the moon, because the moon's relationship with Mercury is important. And that tells a lot potentially about memory, as well as what nurtures a child. And we've said what a wonderful world it would be if we could access all of this information from our data banks while we were planning lessons. But for the time being, parents, get on it. Yeah.
Mm.
So I think we better go, Ollie, because it has been a bit to and from. So you're going to stop the recording.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'll stop the recording.